This is the Anything Goes with Jax and Neill podcast. Welcome back. I'm your host, Jax and Neill, here for episode number 106. And today, I'm talking with John Pelant of Night Moves about their latest album, Can You Really Find Me? But first, I just want to remind everyone that this podcast is available on all of your favorite platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, YouTube, and SoundCloud. It's also available on jacksonneillpodcast.com, the go-to spot for everything I publish. So John is one of the founding members of the band Night Moves, a band that just released their brand new album, like I mentioned, Can You Really Find Me? A record that I really enjoyed listening to and knew that I had to get John onto the show to discuss this. Currently, the album just came out about a couple weeks ago, and they're in the midst of a tour. They just got done their first leg. They have a second leg coming up. So I talked to him about that album, the tour, and much more. Here's my conversation with him. Can you tell me a little bit about when you guys started working on this project?
Yeah, it was probably like right when like the Penny Days tour started, or when it finished. So that was like fucking 2016, I think, like July. And I remember I was just like home, and I was like, well, I guess, tour's done, the record's out, might as well try and start a new one. And I started working on that song Mexico, that first track, and I was like, okay. Actually, you want to know what? That was like leftover from the Penny Days thing. So I would say even like 2015, some of the songs like date back to then. But, basically like the last 3 years is kind of like when we were working on it.
Gotcha. So why?
Finished it in like July of last year.
Mm-hmm. So that's a solid couple of years on this project. What took it a couple of years?
What took me so long?
I mean, yeah, just like, why did you take those 2 years? Like, were you like thinking out more songs? What was the process like?
Yeah, man, it just takes a long time to do it, I wish I could say it all came out in like 2 weeks, but that's just not how it works.
Now
and it just takes me a long time to get it how I want it, because I don't want it to be fucking like a disposable album. I want it to be able to like last and have some staying power. So I just, I don't know, a little bit of a perfectionist, and it just takes time to get it right,
Yeah, of course. So you said, Mexico and a couple other tracks you kind of took from the last project you guys are working on. Why did you decide to take those little elements from the last album and incorporate it into this one?
It just seems like it makes sense, It's kind of like, you have your sound as a band, and you don't want to like alienate any of like your fans, but also it's just like it's like a sound I like, and I feel like there's still like things to investigate. And even though, like I say, like Mexico was like, it was totally unfinished. It was just like a snippet. It was like the bongo drum beats, and I had the chords, and I had a melody. And then I like fleshed it out like 10 times over like 2 years, and was like, okay, now it's a song. But it wasn't really finished when, we were recording Penny Days. So yeah, does that answer it? Sorry, I kind of like spaced out there.
No, yeah, that completely answers it. I find that kind of interesting, though. And you talk about you kind of develop your sound as a band. You don't want to stray from it too far. How did you, over these past couple of years working on this project, kind of develop that sound but not stray too far?
Oh man, I don't know. It just takes time, Like every day, you kind of like chisel away at it, kind of shape it up. It's like every day, it's like, all right, well, it's not there yet, but I can, And then you just go to a new track, and you come back to the old one, and it just kind of like develops with you over those like few years. So it's like, is this anything new, or is this even good, And you kind of just, it's just like sculpting it, kind of, and you kind of just like, I guess when you're there, you're there, and it's kind of, it just takes time.
It's that thing that you just kind of know when you hear it. It's hard to put words to it.
Yeah, like there'd be times, like in like the writing process when I was like, this sounds fucking like you know, the shit we did like 3 years ago, like it's not good enough, but I know where it has to be. And then you just keep like searching for the right like drum kit or like, you know, the right keyboard tone and yeah, like the right guitar part. It's just, I don't know. It's just like it's hard to say, but you just kind of know like, oh, okay, is this good enough? Is this the third album? Is this a candidate to be on the third record? You know, there was like a few tracks that I had that I was like, yeah, I really want this to be on there. And it was like, no, it's not good enough. So those ones will probably be on the next one. Mm-hmm. If they like, you know, end up maturing.
Gotcha. Yeah, they end up starting to fit. And why didn't you include those tracks? Was it just because they didn't fit the kind of creative direction of this project? Or was it more of these aren't up to the standard?
They just weren't good enough, you know? Yeah, they weren't good enough. They're not ready yet. It was just kind of like, we all kind of agreed it was like these 10 songs was the record, you know?
Mm-hmm. Does it usually...
And it was like, all right, these ones...
Is it usually that unanimous of a decision when it comes to these track lists?
Yeah, I mean, well, there was like multiple conversations about it, you know, with like the label, with Jim, the producer, Mickey and I, and we just were like, yeah, this is the record. This is going to be a really solid record if we put these 10. We didn't really know the track list, but we had 10, and we were like, all right, we can make something happen with this. So
definitely.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think I also like something you said earlier about how you wanted to make music that lasts, that doesn't just, you know, isn't disposable and just goes away. What about this album do you think, in your opinion, makes it that it's lasting music, that it doesn't go away in a week or so?
Oh man, I mean, I listened to it for like 3 years, so I say that, you know, like loosely. I don't know if it'll like last, but I can tell you that it lasted like the writing period of 3 years. So I know it was good enough to not drive me insane, you know. Mm-hmm. Like I still like it. I still listen to it and I'm like, yeah, this is good. It's held up over the past 3 years. You know, I've probably heard it. I'll probably hear this record more than anyone else will hear it, you know.
So I find that
I've listened to it so many times, and just in that sculpting process, you have to hear the playback so many times, just like figuring it out. And so I think if you do it enough, you just kind of like, yeah, this is good. I like this, or this is the best that I can do. So I don't know.
Mm-hmm. When you listen back to your albums, you know, now that this one is out and it's finished, are there things you listen back and you regret, maybe, oh, that lyric or that thing, or are you usually pretty content and able to kind of move forward past each project?
Yeah, no, not. It's funny, because I got all that out during like the writing process. You know, like all the songs were so heavily demoed out just in my like little home bedroom studio. And so when we went down to record it, it was already like so fleshed out, and we just had to kind of really just like figure out like drum tones, because everything else was like mapped out mm-hmm. to a T. So it was just like, all right, you know, I figured all that shit out. Wait, what was the question again?
I'm just wondering if there's any regrets you have when you go back and re-listen to a project.
Oh, yeah, sorry. No, not at the moment.
Gotcha. So I find this title, I kind of like it. Can You Really Find Me? I guess, how does that kind of describe the creative direction of this album?
So I feel like with every record, it's kind of like a period piece of those like 3 years or 2.5 years that you spent writing it, and just kind of about what you've been through, what you're going through. And so I think it's just kind of like, I don't know. It was just like the words that came out over that melody, you know, mm-hmm. the da-da-da-da-da-da. And so I was like, I don't know what the fuck that means, but it sounds good. And so then over time, it was kind of like, okay, yeah, I guess that could be a good like closing track, and maybe even like the title track for the record. And so then it was kind of like, well, does it have any meaning? And I was kind of thinking like, well, I guess, you know, if all these records are just like a period piece, like of these 3 years of my life and just like what I've been going through, it's kind of like, if you're always changing, you know, from like, I don't know, decade to decade or whatever, like every like 3 years, you're kind of become like a new person in this new album cycle. I guess it's just kind of like, all right, will this still be relevant, you know, to me when I'm like 40? I don't know. Because it always, after the record comes out, I'm kind of like, whoa, that was a whirlwind. I don't really know, you know. I think you know, but everything kind of like matures with age. You know, the songs come to mean something different. Like things on Penny Days, like I heard like a year ago, I re-listened to the record and I was like, oh, okay, that's what I was talking about, you know. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it does. So it even takes time for you as the creator to really fully understand and grasp the mature understanding of your record, even years after it comes out.
Yeah, kind of. You know, like you think you know what you're doing in the moment, but like over time, I think you have you have that retrospective. Mm-hmm. You know, where you can kind of look back and it seems it's just like clearer to you or something.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
So.
And I also, and you mentioned how Can You Really Find Me is also the closing track on it. I liked that the project ends on a question. There's kind of an open-endedness to it.
Yeah. It felt like a nice way to, you know, cap it.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned
it just felt right. Sometimes things just feel right, and I couldn't really like go on beyond that. It was just like, yeah, that's the right move, you know.
Yeah, it's like that feeling you get. You just know this is the right thing.
You're like, this is the great. It just felt like, okay, this is the way to like end the third album, you know.
Mm-hmm. So
it just felt right.
You mentioned your producer Jim. Jim, you know, he helped out on this project. What was it like having him on the production and just helping out in the mixing and stuff?
Oh man, it was amazing. He's got this really cool studio in Austin, and so we were just able to go down there and basically like live there. There's like, you know, like a shower and there's like futons and like a kitchen, and so we just kind of like went there. He's a drummer in Spoon, if you know that band, and like, so he just has like all kinds of like snares, and that's like the hardest fucking thing is getting like drum tones on a record, you know, and not having them sound stupid. So I was really particular about that. And even before we went down, we like hopped on the phone and I was like, well, we emailed, you know, to kind of put out feelers of like who would be a good candidate. And he like emailed us like right back and he was like, yo, what's up? What are you looking to do? And I was like, you know, and so we hopped on the phone and I just explained to him, it was like, you know, I want the drums to sound like this and I want them to be like the demo, but like, you know, obviously more pro, because I don't have like fancy gear. He's got all this like really nice like vintage analog gear down there in Austin. So yeah, it was great. It was so good. It was way easier than the last one. But yeah, I don't know. He's a real cool dude, you know.
Yeah, I mean,
it's awesome working with him.
And of course, yeah, the drummer for Spoon, that's just such a cool thing to be able to create a project, you know, with a guy like that. So you went down there and you stayed at his place, literally at his place in Austin. I guess, what was it like being in a different place recording this project? I guess, what kind of feelings did you get being in Austin that you might not have gotten being in somewhere else?
I don't know, man. It was amazing because it's funny, like Austin, like during South by Southwest is the only other time that we've been there. And we, you know, we've toured through there, so not during South by Southwest, but like different months. And it was always kind of like, okay, Austin's cool, but like South by Southwest fucking sucks. So we always kind of had like a skewed perception of it. But I guess when we were down there doing the record, it was like, I don't know, it was so comfortable, you know. There wasn't like stress of like having to play shows, and I don't know, it's so fucking hot down there too. It's so much different than like Minnesota. So it kind of felt like we were in like a different, I don't know, almost like a different, just a different state of mind.
Exactly. Yeah, you're able to almost escape and experience maybe different things and creating a music environment.
It was nice. Yeah, it was nice like being able to like write it at my home and here in Minneapolis. But then when you take it down there, you kind of have like a different frame of mind, a different lens on the whole thing. And everyone's just kind of like, well, not on vacation, you know, because you're working, but I think everyone was just happy to be there, you know. Mm-hmm. It was like, okay, finally we're going to finish this fucking thing. And it went really well. So I don't know. It's pretty good.
Yeah, sounds like a pretty good thing. Right now, you guys have the record. It just came out. You just finished up the first run of tour dates. How was that?
There was some really good ones in there, man. Like the New York show was really great. Chicago was really great. Atlanta. There's like towns, that we never played before, like Carborough, North Carolina, and that was really good. Never played Louisville, Kentucky before. But yeah, I don't know. I was surprised, at some of the shows. I was like, wow, I can't believe there's like this many people coming out, But I guess we hadn't toured in like 3 years, so yeah, it was cool. I was very surprised and thankful,
Yeah, sorry I couldn't be there at the Philly show, but how are you feeling heading into this?
It's okay. That one was all right, man. That one's okay. Maybe it's good you didn't come to that.
Okay. So how are you feeling going into the second run of dates now with towards the end of July?
I feel really good. It was cool because we had a sound guy out with us for the first time, and I feel like that makes like a world's difference. We'd never had like our own sound guy with us, so you just end up using the house guy. And I think our sound is so nuanced that we can really suck, if the mix isn't right. So I don't know. It was almost like I never want to tour again without a sound guy. Mm-hmm. Having someone who knows what it's supposed to sound like and gets it is like, I don't know. It's so important.
I've worked.
So I feel really good, man. This was like the best tour we'd ever been on.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah.
So I'm actually looking forward to it. Sometimes touring is such a pain in the ass, and it's just like I don't know. You never know what to expect, but it's nice having some consistency from night to night with the sound. Mm-hmm. So.
Yes, certainly. Yeah.
I've looking forward to it.
I've worked at venues, and it's like I've seen firsthand the great sound guys and the subpar ones, and make a world of difference on the show.
Yeah, because then the performer is like, if they're not feeling it, the audience isn't stupid. They can clearly pick up on that, and then the whole like vibe of like the evening is ruined. And then it's kind of like, what was the fucking point? Like, why are we here if like no one's enjoying themselves?
And again, a big thank you to John for coming onto the podcast. Go down into the show notes on whatever platform you're listening on. There, I'll have links so you can check out their latest album, Can You Really Find Me? An awesome, awesome record, as well as a link to check out the live dates for the second run of live shows they have. Check down there, see if they're coming to a city near you, because they're definitely a really cool band if you can get the chance to see them live. And that'll wrap it up. Thank you so much for listening to the Anything Goes with Jackson Neill podcast. Make sure to subscribe and rate this podcast on your favorite platforms because that does a lot to help grow the show. Remember, new episodes every Tuesday and Thursday. For more episodes, go down into the show notes and visit the link to jacksonneillpodcast.com. There you'll find all of the episodes to this podcast, as well as the Jackson Neill Music and Sports Podcasts. New episodes of the Music Podcast on Sundays, with the Sports Podcast coming on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. If you're a big fan of the show, maybe consider becoming a subscriber on Patreon. For just a couple dollars a month, you can get access to bonus content from my interviews here on Anything Goes, including today's with John, where I ask him about his music he's listening to. We talk a little bit about Vampire Weekend. We talk about the crazy person he really wants to have dinner with. It's an answer that really shocked me, and there's a whole other rabbit hole we go down. So definitely, if you want to check that out, go to Patreon, because you also get access to bonus segments from both my sports and music podcasts. I write, record, produce these podcasts all by myself as a full-time college student, so any little bit of support really, really does go a long way. Link to Patreon down in the show notes. If you want to stay up to date on everything I'm doing, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at JacksonNeill20. Today's music is by Analog by Nature with their song CDK Sunday. And that's all. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you all next time.